Happy Ramadan. I'm aware that this is the first day of fasting, so I'm going to try to be as short and as brief as possible, and I mean try to keep it interesting. First of all, I wanted to say a couple of things. Why this topic? Why did I choose this topic? Well, most of you, I think most of you are already familiar with...
because the French consulate is in a very nice spot in Belgrade.
Now I have to say, I mean, when I finished my my studies, bachelor studies, my major was French language, literature, and culture, and then I decided to do master thesis, to write a master thesis, and to move to the Department of Oriental Studies. And then I cannot thank enough my professor and thesis advisor, Professor Danko Danoskovic, who actually kind of gave me, showed me this direction where I could at the same time make a combination of French language and another literature that I have been always very interested about, and it's Arabic literature of North Africa. So at that time, 4 years ago, I wasn't very aware of the thing that this is exactly what this institute is about, and that I will be studying here.
Actually, you should be studying this here. Actually,
yes. I mean, it's a very interesting and passionate topic. I mean, but it's still marginal, and as far as the resource, I mean, when I'm talking about the resources, I've been using mostly French resources, and this is the first time that I'm giving the conference in English. So, inshallah, hopefully it will be okay. I'm just wondering how many of you are francophone here? Okay. Okay. First, why this topic is so important? Okay, we're gonna talk about a specific literature of the Maghreb. So we're gonna cover this post-colonial literature of Tunisia, Algeria, and Morocco. But there is something very universal about the topic itself. So let's just see. Most of us, I mean, we ask ourselves during our lifetime at least once this question: who am I? And where do I belong? And how to reconcile East and West within one's own identity, especially we here. I mean, we have been talking a lot about this identity crisis and about our own identity, which is a very vast concept, and it's not easy to give an answer on what exactly identity is. So I'm just gonna ask you in the beginning to take maybe 1 minute and to think about like 3 adjectives or 3 attributes that describe yourself. Like, if you can describe yourself in 3 words. So I'm going to give you some time just to think and to come up with 3 things which are the most, let's say, typical of you. If you have just to choose 3 words to say I am and then.
3 words after I am, or
yes,
I am.
If you think that the 3rd word, I mean, after I am, would be enough, then it's okay. Otherwise, 3. So, ready? I need some volunteers. There's someone who would like to say, yes, please.
I'm a Muslim Colombian.
Okay.
I'm a student.
that's the only thing.
Okay.
Till I finish my thesis.
Okay.
So
Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'm a Turkish female writer.
Okay, anyone else? else?
Fatima wants to.
We were revising our,
Yeah.
and we both said open-minded. Open-minded.
Okay.
That's it? No, that's vegan.
Open-minded vegan.
She said sincere for her, for both of us.
Doesn't work that way.
No, you have to say for yourself.
Exactly.
You
Doesn't-
have
you
to.
ruined it.
You
It
are the
doesn't
one.
count.
We had similar answers.
No, you shouldn't have talked. You ruined
It
it.
is like munakat, you know, like this interview question, like when you have to present yourself. This is just
Okay,
do
I
this.
said open-minded to myself before I spoke. Open-minded, friendly, funny.
Okay.
I think.
Okay.
Vegan is not.
Not first three.
Okay. Anyone else?
Muslim, African, liberal.
Okay. Muslim, African. Okay. So, what was my point here? I wanted to see what criteria you would use when you describe yourself. And some of you have said Muslim, some of you said African, some of you said Turkish, female.
Apparently, I'm a nationalist.
You have used either criterion of religion, ethnicity, gender. So basically, this is those are the questions we're gonna talk about. So here, especially this literature of Maghreb, we have like the holy trinity, I would say, like identity. First, we have identity, we have the question of belonging, and we have the matter of personal choice. So those are the three things that are what French would say les enjeux. So the very important things in this literature of Maghreb, of the Maghreb. So what do you think this represents? What does it tell to you? I mean, when you look at this picture, what do you see?
I see the film Mother.
Okay.
Have you seen it?
Yes.
Good. You see what I mean? Mother. We were talking about this earlier in the morning. It's a very good film.
I don't want to see it again.
Yeah, it's difficult.
What's all this stuff?
The point is here. The point is what I wanted to show. Like this is supposedly should be. I mean, an Arab man, an Arab who is actually doing an introspection, who is trying to figure out who he is actually, who is looking inside of himself, trying to see inside of like what it is inside of his soul. So this is exactly what those writers and authors in the Maghreb are trying to do. Here is one of the quotes of Abdel Wahab Medad, he's Tunisian writer. He says like, je me situe entre les langues, entre les cultures, entre les territoires, entre les continents, entre les genres, enfin. So I situate myself between the languages, between the cultures, between the territories, between the continents, between literary genres. So the point is that they cannot, an Arabic writer of the, North African writer, he cannot say that he's either here or there, but he's always somewhere in between. And this is the whole literature is about how to make peace with all of these multiple belongings and multiple identities. So we always have this kind of binary oppositions or concept of duo that Albert Mimi, also a Tunisian writer, introduced. So we have always this Christian versus Islamic, colonial versus native, and French versus Arabic. So in the Maghreb, in Tunisia, Algeria, and Morocco, we have this kind of contact between two civilizations, Western civilization and Islamic civilization, whose values and ideas in most of the cases are opposed to each other or mutually exclusive. So the problem comes when the individual itself has to reconcile them within. As I said, like the problem gets even more complex when if we think about the fact that in the North Africa, in those three countries, we don't have only Arabs, we have also Berbers, and we have also Jews. So we're going to see on the example of Albert Memmi, who is also known as a philosopher of the dual concept. So what is also this dual concept? Always thinking in like oppositions. There's this colonizer and colonized. There's many essays written about the relationship between colonizer and colonized, the one who is dominant and the one who is subjugated and suppressed. And also we're going to see how it works within a marriage when we have the phenomenon, let's call it that way, like mixed marriages between either French woman and an Arab or vice versa. So within a couple, when we have a man and woman, we have one who is actually like who takes the role of colonizer, and the other one who takes the role of colonized. And we, unfortunately, in most of the cases, it ends up in failure, but we will see that later. So just to say about some like subtopics to cover before we go to examples of the literature itself. I mean, of the poetry before we cover poetry and prose works. So we're going to talk about. We're going to put this a little bit in the context. So we're going to talk about French colonization a little bit of North Africa and the whole geopolitical situation of the Maghreb. Then we're going to talk about the importance of French language, which is very. Which is definitely a topic that cannot be skipped, and motives behind autobiographies. So, what pushes people to write an autobiography, or to write fiction with the elements of autobiography? So let's just see the. Okay, this is what is everything which is blue is called like this Grand Maghreb, but we are just gonna concentrate and focus our attention on this dark blue. So Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco. This is, French part of North Africa. Colonized by French. So what can we say about this? First, we have the specific case of Algeria. Okay, we are gonna take the whole. When we talk about the literature itself. Which is called in French La littérature maghrébine d'expression française, so the Maghreb literature of French expression. But that title, that way to define it, is a very problematic one because it's not really of French expression. Okay, it is written in French language. It is French rhetoric elegance is certainly used. But the literature itself is purely an Arabic one. So we have kind of mixture of two. So we're going to see how the French language has been used. Has it been used as pure intellectual tool, or is it really felt? Is it deeply felt? So the specific case of Algeria. The whole this northern part of northern part of Africa was colonized because of the decline of the Ottoman Empire, and already in 1830 Algeria becomes a French colony. And stays so until 1962 after the war. After a terrible war, and this was the most violent situation of French colonization in North Africa. Whereas Tunisia and Morocco were French protectorates, so they had different status than Algeria. They were colonies, French colonies for a shorter time. Tunisia, for example, from 1881 until 1956, and Morocco from 1912 to 1955. So we have that. We see the different, very different situation between Tunisia and Morocco, who in a way preserved their Islamic character and their Arabic identity. But in Algeria we have a much more complex situation, because the only language taught in schools were actually French. While, for example, in Tunisia we have Arabic was taught alongside French. So this acculturation wasn't that violent and wasn't that destructive and penetrating like in Algeria. So there was this very big paradox in Algeria after the independence, because after the First World War and especially after the Second World War, we had the awakening of national identity, national consciousness. And after the independence, we have the programs of Arabization, or going back to roots. In a way, they wanted to ban French. They wanted to kind of erase completely this colonial presence of French. But that wasn't so easy, especially in the case of Algeria, because after the independence they didn't have enough people who knew Arabic well enough in order to teach. So that we know that France wasn't the only colonial power. We have many other colonial powers, but French in a way they were very. They kind of came into all the pores of the daily life. So they infiltrated, and they were everywhere. Like French was omnipresent everywhere. So they couldn't actually just ban it once the independence was declared. Yes. So. There's also this linguistic drama, why French language was used as a medium. First of all, there was this huge impact of the French education. So there were French schools in Algeria, for example, only those.
What do you mean French language as a medium for home? For the writers you're talking about?
Yes, for the writers. In the normal, in the daily life, they were talking. There's basically three languages.
No. So what is this addressing? What I want to know. French language as a medium for home, for the writers you're talking about, or for Algeria in general?
For Algerians in general.
Okay, for Algerians in general.
Yes. Okay. So normally, in Algeria, as well as in Tunisia and Morocco, we have this standard Arabic language. But they weren't using it. They were using normally. They would talk with their parents on the dialect. But the French language was so. It was everywhere due to this French education. So from the primary school, high schools, universities, then in academia as well. Not all but many of the journals started to be published in French. And it was also the way, as it was seen, a ticket to France and to better future. Why the writers? The writers who opted for French, why did they do this? First of all, it's called une langue désacralisée. Why? Because they could, in a way, after the independence, they could express the subjects like religion, women, revolt, language, and gender. Everything that was seen as taboo and that couldn't be expressed in Arabic due to its religious or linguistic constraints. French was more flexible in that way. So they would write about all these taboo themes in French.
Is flexible your definition? Or how other people use the word flexible?
The other people use it. I mean, I don't speak Arabic, so I cannot say is it more.
No, in the
flexible?
sense that who says it's more flexible than Arabic?
The writers themselves. Those who opted for French.
Okay.
Those who opted for French, there are different approaches to French from those who are passionately in love with French and say, for example, who adopted it, from those who see it as a boutique of guerre, bouton de guerre. And they said that they had to adopt it in order to survive. So for those who they've seen it as something that they had to kind of take in order to stay alive and to adopt to the situation. So there is a very good essay written in 1965 by Anna Greki, who is an Algerian, and the title is Être ou ne pas être, which means to be or not to be. So she's asking the question, she's actually writing this essay in order to respond to the conservatives who were calling the writers who chose French as their language, as the medium of their expression. In order to answer them, she was asking questions like, should we go back to 1830 and become a tabula rasa? Are we to blame because we had to adopt this language in order to survive? Because with French, it's not just a language. It came a whole set of values and beliefs. So you have French motto, liberté, égalité, fraternité, which was also something that they used as their weapon in order to when they fought for their independence. So in a way, French gave them a way to, to fight against. In a way, they gave them. It was this a two-sided sword. It was like a two-sided sword. Another interesting situation. Who were those who adopted French easily? Those were Jews. Or Berbers. So Berbers were, there was no a middle way for Berbers. So they were either those like very passionate about the French language, or they were completely against it, were the fervent adepts of Arabization. So for them there was no middle way. But for Jews, for example, they readily accepted French because they said it was their way to resist assimilation. So for those non-Arabs. Okay, this is I came to this essay. So she says here, the ideal portrait of Algerian writer would be, according to those who are making, the critics, they have to be Arabs and Muslims. So this is a criterion of race. They have to, their language, they have to write in Arabic. So it is a linguistic criterion. The other one, they have to be good Muslims, religious criterion, and they have to have specific ideas. This socialism specific, and this is a political criterion. So those who didn't want to go to censorship and to censor themselves, they had either to stop writing or go to exile, and usually to France. So immigration is another very important theme that we're gonna talk about. And we come to another question: why autobiography? Why there is so much adepts of autobiography, or even when they're writing fiction, why there are so many autobiographical references or details? So, as you probably know, etymologically speaking, autobiography comes from three Greek words: autos, bios, and graphein. So, writing about one's own life. So it's an account of a person's life written by that person. This is a separate literary genre, and which is very typical of this is the subjectivity. So everything is written in a very subjective manner. So in a way, you're making a testimony about your own life, about your own feelings, about everything that concerns you. And sometimes it's going like, in some cases, it's like walking, really in their cases it's like walking naked and showing everything to the world. So what is typical of this literary genre is that the author is at the same time the first person narrator and the main character, and usually they sometimes we see the alienation when they're using the third person of singular, but in the most cases, let's say 99% of cases, they always say this je or moi. So almost always in the first person of singular. So there was, as we said, they're talking about their internal and external experiences. So what they're covering. Their birth, family, and relatives, important places. So important places, it's actually means, first of all, their lieu de naissance, as they call it, so the place where they were born. And we see that the most of them are alienated. They have a very specific relationship to their homeland. Some of them say, for example, as a mother cannot be chosen, I couldn't, for example, choose the place, my hometown, for example. They feel as strangers in their hometown. But once they go abroad, many of them feel this nostalgia, and they're nostalgic about their homeland, and they're very touching testimonies about this when they say, for example, mon pays, je te sais, mais est-ce que tu me reconnais? For example, my country, my homeland, I know you, but do you remember me? After that, we have education, school. So in the case of these French schools, some writers, some authors describe this in also in very sensitive way. They're very insightful parts. They compare it with cutting the umbilical cord. They say that once they go to the French school, it's like cutting the umbilical cord with their mother tongue. So they never feel as they felt before. They're kind of losing their, how to say, relation with their mother, with their own culture and tradition, whereas they should be rooted in the Islamic tradition. So it's a very dramatic point in every student's life. Then they're talking about love life. We're going to come to this special case of mixed marriages. And they're also talking about vocation, why they chose writing. Okay, motivations behind confessional writing. What can it be? Sometimes we're thinking why, for example, if you're among us, among you, I mean those who are writing diaries, you know, for example, for your own motivation why you're writing the diary. But here in this particular,
you have 10 minutes. Do you want to skip to your example?
Okay.
You're coming to your examples.
Okay, yeah. This is one of the this is one of the contested works of Tahar Benjeloun. I'm sure that some of you have heard of him. He's actually living in France for 35 years.
Also,
But
when you
he's-
do this kind of research, are these all because the ones who've immigrated and the ones who are writing in French in France is a different category than the ones who are writing in French in Algeria, right? Are you just mixing them all together?
Yes, because they're in
They're
some
a different category though.
but they're in a way they all emigrated at one part of their life. All of those, all
the
of those.
decision to emigrate, I think, makes a clear distinction between the categories.
There are those.
I think.
No,
If I was your thesis
Okay.
supervisor, I wouldn't allow that.
okay. This is for the presentation. Because
Yeah, I know.
I had to mix them up a little bit. Okay. The thing is, even those who stayed, who opted to stay in Morocco, for example, there are those who stayed. Mohammed Khaireddin, for example, they actually. Didn't go, but not because they had their personal reasons for not going, but it doesn't change really their point of view towards the.
But they're different categories. I'm sorry, I'm very sort of nitpicking about the categories and what you can compare with what. Like you can't do oranges and apples.
Okay. Anyway, here in Haruta, the story is about the prostitute. So it covers the life of a prostitute and says here that this is just one of the quotations. Under the guise of certain generosity, French colonialism was more cruel. I do not have homeland anymore. By the way, this is normally this would be censored, and Arab critiques attacked this work. But anyway, my point is that almost all of the authors, they're using such a vivid language in order to describe their own life and everything. It is like, I don't know if you have heard of a Greek figure of speech, actresses. For example, when you're describing something in a very vivid way, so you can see actually. For example, if I tell you, if I'm talking about the lemon, you can feel it in your mouth. So I'm describing it in a way so you can really have the taste of it. So this is they're covering a very vast scope of subjects. This was just about the one about the nostalgic feelings for the one's country. When Tahar Benjeloun was asked about his status in France, so he said that in France immigrants were invisible, and when they weren't, they were horribly treated. So as an educated Moroccan, it fell to me to speak up for North Africa, for the Arab world, which had never been my program at all. So this is just one of the examples. Okay, you can buy it or not. Anyway, this is one of the concerns of almost every Maghrebian writer. This concern to say everything and to reach the truth. So it's called the rhetorical de Moha, so the return of Moha. I can tell everything, nothing of the truth is spared to me. It is the need to speak so as not to suffocate, to avoid being trampled by the dead or the living, to continue to see and transmit, to dominate pain and be reborn from the depths of suffering. Okay, since we don't have much time, I'm just gonna skip. This is when we're talking in the beginning. One of the definitions of the Maghrebian novel. So the novel, according to Al-Ghamari, who is the Tunisian writer of Jewish descendants, he said the Maghrebian novel is essentially a memorial novel. So we have this autobiographical aspect. A novel of origins, and its first obsession is to say everything, to constitute this total book where everything would be said about this past before the colonial fall and its extension of history. So we have this idea of kind of rupture and also the continuity at the same time. Okay, this right now. In his maybe the most famous novel, which is called The Pillar of Sand, La Statue de Sal. Do you know what it means actually? What
There's
happened?
a Jordanian novel by the same name.
So it's a very powerful symbol. There is in Book of Genesis we have the woman, the wife of Lot, who turned into stone when she turned back and looked at Sodom, the city of Sodom. So I don't know if you're familiar with that. So
we know that she kind of wasn't one of the pure ones, but there's no kind of pillar of salt that we know that she was damned.
Kind of she disobeyed. It's she disobeyed, and that's why she. Lot and his two daughters, they saved themselves because they didn't disobey. They just kept looking forward. But she turned. She was too.
The same story, but not she was just punished.
Yeah. So I guess turning back symbolized that she had some kind of nostalgia for the bad ways of what was happening. So I guess that's where the
And curiosity, which is not like.
Because
I would say more nostalgia than curiosity. Okay. Is that in the Quran? Don't look back. Oh, okay.
Okay.
That makes sense.
So for him, when he left Tunisia for France, when he went to Sorbonne, he lived a complete disappointment. He was very disappointed by the whole system because he had so high expectation of France. But in a way, this pillar of salt, he kind of tries not to look back. Like the main character, whose name, by the way, is Alexandre Benelux Mordecai. So every name means something else. So Alexandre, it's typical. Like it's French. It makes you think of Western civilization. Benelux Mordecai, like it's like he says in one part, it's so révélateur. It's so like it shows that he's of Jewish descendants, and this is what he wanted to hide actually. So he said for himself that
he is Jewish, the writer?
He's Jewish. He was raised in Tunisia, so the whole community, in Arab community, he's speaking Arabic, but he has been schooled in a French manner. So all this, let's say, French education, and all the values shaped those individuals in a way that they couldn't actually avoid. Or couldn't fight even if they wanted to. So this is what he says. Like
Give 5 minutes more.
Okay. I'm just
You
gonna
need to
skip.
chair. I'm telling you, if you wipe with the chair, you finish on time.
Okay, and then you say don't mix up. How not to mix up? Okay. I'm Jew, my home is the ghetto, my legal status is native African, I come from an Oriental background, I'm poor, but I had learned to reject these 4 classifications. Another book by Albert Memmi, so Le Nomade Immobile. Okay, I'm just going to read this. Each of my books will have been a stage on the same journey. I will have spent the greater part of my life writing. Writing has often served me as a crutch. Everyone has their own, so that my life and my work corresponded to each other. And in speaking of one, I'm speaking of the other, and vice versa. All literary work is more or less autobiographical. Let's say that mine is more openly than some. Autobiography is, like every human undertaking, an attempt to say something to someone. Unquestionably, I have a stronger need to explain myself to plead, perhaps. Okay, let's just skip this because we don't have time. West, okay. Salim Bashi is, by the way, an Algerian writer of a new generation who also moved to France, who had this Goncourt Prize for his one of his novels, and maybe the first sentence is the most important one. Moi, je suis un homme neuf dans un pays neuf. I'm a new man in a new country. So, okay, this is also about the identity crisis. I don't know
the same Salim.
No, this is Abdelatif Labi, also the Moroccan writer. Okay, another. Okay, just to cover a little bit of the, because I really wanted to cover this part of women writers, because they're very important in Algeria's.
Yeah, we haven't even touched on Jabal yet.
We did. Asiya Jabbar, the most well-known Algerian writer.
But okay, start with Mernissi.
Okay, Fatima Mernissi, by the way, my favorite author. She's a Moroccan sociologist and feminist. She has here. I mean, this is one of the Dreams of Trespass, Tales of Harem Girlhood. Has been published in 1994. What is so extraordinary about female writers here is about that in the first time in history they were fighting along their compatriots, and they male compatriots, and since they couldn't fight in different ways, they were fighting with words, and it's proved very efficient and very.
Of course, you've seen Battle of Algiers.
Yes. Okay, those are when she was here. She's talking about her childhood in harem. So I'm just gonna read this. Once I asked Mina why she danced so smoothly while most of the other women made abrupt, jerky movements, and she said that many of women confused liberation with agitation. Some ladies are angry with their lives, she said, and so even their dance becomes an expression of that. Angry women are hostages of their anger. They cannot escape it and set themselves free, which is indeed a sad fate. The worst of prison is a self-created one. So it says a lot about. I mean, they're very different team to. Subjects to be covered. Another of her. Books is Shahrazad Goes West. It is also an autobiography. She's talking about, she's anyway about this liberated, independent Moroccan woman, and she's very concerned about what is halal and what is haram, about the boundaries and about crossing the boundaries. She's talking also about the mind as erotic weapon, and why every woman in the North Africa is a little bit of Shahrazad, because while they cannot play on the card of their beauty, they're playing on the other card of their intellect, and the way that they express themselves, this is where their power actually lies. There is a very interesting comparison in the end of the book where she's talking about Western women's harem. So we know about, first of all, her relationship with male journalists, European, while talking to them, she's constantly asking herself questions: what is haram, what is halal? About the themes of gaze, looking and everything. But then in the end of the book, we see what is actually what what was considered to be a Western woman's harem, and I'm just gonna just a small I'm gonna read this. So it was during my unsuccessful attempt to buy a cotton skirt in an American department store that I was told my hips were too large to fit into a size 6. This distressing experience made me realize how the image of beauty in the West can hurt and humiliate a woman as much as the veil does when enforced by the state policy in extremist nations such as Iran, Afghanistan, or Saudi Arabia. Yes, that day I stumbled onto one of the keys to the enigma of passive beauty in Western harem fantasies. The elegant sales lady in the American store looked at me without moving from her desk and said that she had no skirt my size. In this whole big store, there's no skirt for me, I said. You're joking. I felt very suspicious and thought that she just might be too tired to help me. I could understand that, but then the saleswoman added a condescending judgment which sounded to me like an imam's fatwa. It left no room for discussion. You are too big, she said. So here we see if we have harem in the Eastern conception like a closed space, and if we don't have freedom, if women don't have freedom of movement, then we have in West something even worse, and that is the time. So once the woman we have this ideal of beauty that every woman in the West should conform to, and also once you're older than a certain age, you're not considered to be attractive, so you're like invisible. So you don't have really this kind. We can do something about the place or freedom of movement, but we cannot do anything about the time or aging, which is a natural process. I mean, it should be a natural process, but I mean, it's just one of the. It just shows how it is in the Western society.
Shall we just move on to Jabbar? If you go to Jabbar.
Yes. Okay.
You want to show Jabbar first?
Sure. So another very important thing when it comes to female writers in general is their usage of images. So verbal and visual arts are very much kind of how to say combined. So Assia Jabbar, for example, as I said, Algeria's best-known female author. She has written a lot about this revolt, and she, for example, for her, for example, French language is seen as the booty of war. So it's not something that she's taking voluntarily, but she still.
Does one have to take booty?
You don't have many, as far as, I mean, I haven't been in Algeria, but as far as I've read, at the time after the independence, they didn't have much, many teachers who can...
no, that I understand, but booty is not something, booty is something you take.
Yes.
But I mean, I think that's what I mean, it's not about not having a choice, maybe it's more to do with, I mean, if it's booty, there's more agency in it.
Okay. Yes, it's a personal choice. In a way, it's a personal choice. Okay, she one of her novels, Femmes d'Alger dans leur appartement, published in 1980. So Women of Algiers in Their Apartment is named after the famous painting by Delacroix. I just wanted to say about to tell some. To make a kind of comparison between Assia Jabbar and Fatima Mernissi, because Mernissi also is using a lot of those visual arts in her book. So, for example, this Dreams of Trespass, Tales of a Harem Girlhood, she every chapter of this memoir, in every chapter she used a different photograph by Ruth Ward. Anyway, and when it comes to the usage of a language itself, all of these female writers, we see very short. We have the influence of Arabic to French, so it's not a pure French. It's okay; those are French words, but they're using it as a purely intellectual tool. The sentences are short. They're violent, very intense, and we have very poor. We have fragmented kind of. We have fragments always. We have fragmented expression, and we have poor interpunction.
I was going to say it's like reading your papers.
So okay,
General.
French language.
No subject, no verb. Yeah.
And it definitely doesn't respect the form of the traditional
Absolutely,
novel.
no papers, yes.
Okay, we can talk just about a little bit about the body, which is one of the central themes in this literature. So there every time, I mean not every time, but in almost every novel we have the description of hammam. We have a body which is seen as a museum and the manifestation of what is happening inside. So everything which is happening inside, all the feelings, all kind of internal fights or questions or everything that happens, it can be seen. I mean, it finds its physical manifestation in the body. So we see like the body is a museum which conserves all of those past traces. Also, we have, I mean, not only women writers, but also male writers insist very much on the senses. So every writer has, not every writer, but many of them have the sense, have chosen a sense that they want actually to make the most, how to say, vivid impression on. For example, for Al-Ghanami, it's smell. So he's talking about different smells and others, and they're also talking about bodily fluids. So everything, this literature is not something that you are just reading and then you're kind of. It is thought provoking, but it's thought provoking on a gut level. And it talks to you, it talks to this irrational part of being. It's not talking to your intellect, it's not talking too much to, it doesn't address that much the logic, it addresses everything which, I mean, which Freud would call id. This is very, very deep, and it's very kind of, how to say, once you think that you've came to an answer to a certain question, it's like this mythological creature, Greek mythological creature of Hydra with many heads. Once you cut off one head, you have another 2 or 3 heads coming out from this fresh wound. So it's a really, really vast subject. Another thing, okay, how much?
What would you prefer? No questions or some time for questions?
Questions? Yeah, some time for questions. Okay, this is the most important. Okay, this is the most interesting part. Okay, Love in Two Languages, an extraordinary book written by Abdelkebir Khatibi, Moroccan author. Where we have a love affair between, to say that there's this love affair between two people would be to oversimplify it, because there's a love affair between two languages as well. So it's a love affair between two people, between an Arab man and French woman, but at the same time between French language and Arabic language. So there's certain quotes here, and extraordinary translation seem to unite us. I name myself in two languages in an unnaming myself. I unname myself in telling my story. I hope did you understand? Okay, this is where this is very complex, and you should like. Okay, I just.
The French part is so beautiful. The English is terrible.
Yeah, the English is always terrible to me. But I mean, I wish. I also have this. This is like subjective love of French language. What can I do? Lorsque je t'entretiens dans ta langue,
No,
it's not the same.
It's like a summary. It's like a summary of
it's like another
book or
yes.
something.
It's like another stanza.
Yes, this is another. This one is
Oh,
another.
maybe
Yeah, they're different.
Yeah, they're different. Those
No,
are
it's not even a summary. It's different
No.
stanzas, different poems actually.
different quotes. Those are different quotes. By the way, all of those works are not always available in English. They're mostly available in French.
Okay, we're moving on to questions.
Okay.
Do you want to say?
I want to say just thank you for your This is
I have a question. So this was a thesis, right?
yes, this was a thesis, but I couldn't cover.
Okay, so what was your thesis statement?
My thesis statement were autobiographical elements in post-colonial literature of Maghreb.
Yeah, but what did they do? So what was your, so what did you come up with? What was your conclusion? Yeah, the thesis itself.
The thesis.
That's the subject.
Okay. So.
They write, do you have a thesis like the women tend to write this way, the ones who stay in Algeria wrote that way, or they all write similarly? Did you come up with some kind of conclusion?
Well, yes, but there are different conclusions for different parts of the. I just wanted. I couldn't cover all the.
What is your last slide? Collective identity.
Collective identity.
For your attention.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Collective identity. This part is in French. It says it is taken from also from Albert Memmi. So he basically. I'm just gonna say it briefly. We're all converted Berbers. Sometimes we have been converted to Islam or Judaism, and sometimes we have been converted and reconverted many times. And we lost. We don't remember this anymore. So one part of us thinks that we are Arabs and Muslims, and doesn't like the other part, which thinks that it is Arabic and Jewish, and vice versa. So he just wants to say that no one actually knows who he is, and history is like children, where we have confused. Yes.
Okay, Hajam, I think you had a question. Let's start with you.
No, the question was just explained.
Thesis, but I mean, so is that?
Thesis.